Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're going to continue our Learn to Play series for the British Light Cruiser line by taking a look at Tier 9's HMS Neptune. It's that time, kids. It's that time. I've been warning you about this one, right? I've been warning you about it. I'm going to say it all throughout the video to prepare you for what you're about to be up against. This is arguably the low point of the line. And it's kind of sad because Neptune is not a bad ship, but she has some quirks in her design and her characteristics that make her more challenging to keep alive than almost any other ship in the line. And that's kind of a big thing, right? If you're dead, you can't be out there crushing destroyers' hopes and dreams, can you? And so Neptune is a real challenge. Here's the thing. Once you invest some time in this ship, once you learn how to address her quirks, you're going to discover that she's really, really good. And I won't say she's underrated by the community. I think that's unfair because the community has correctly assessed that she's very easy to kill. And she really is in a lot of cases. But in certain matchups, this ship is gross. Absolutely gross. In fact, I would argue in an engagement against anything below, like a traditional heavy cruiser and below, Neptune holds a lot of cards in those engagements that she can absolutely turn them into victories, okay? When you start getting into the super cruisers and the battleships, yeah, that's going to feel really bad. This is also a ship, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, that really does not care about opposing planes because she murders them so well that you literally can just be like, be gone, buzzing insects, right? Like, her base AA is obscene. So, let's talk through Neptune. Let's explain. Let's lay it all on the table because it's important that you understand more than any other ship in the line, Neptune is a glass cannon. All right, let's start talking. Survivability. Now, you're seeing here 48.5, basically 49,000 hit points. That is with Survivability Expert, okay? So, Neptune comes in base. Let's take a quick peek of this. Unbuffed, this ship has a health pool basically 45,000 hit points. Now, when you put her in a comparison pool against the other Tier 9 light cruisers, and that's what we're going to focus on here, because there are quite a few, right? There's 5 tech tree, technically 6 if you count Donskoy, tech tree light cruisers, and a few premiums, right? I'm looking at you, Hector and Dalian and Vallejo, right? So basically, these are the ships we're going to be kind of talking about Neptune in conjunction with, right? You're looking at Takahashi over in the Japanese light cruiser line. You're looking at Santander out of the Pan American line, Sejong out of the Pan Asian line, Seattle out of the American light cruiser branch, and Dmitry Donskoy out of the Russian cruiser branch. Premium-wise, we really only have the 3 that I talked about. That's Vallejo for the Americans, Dalian for the Pan Asians, and Hector for the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth tech tree cruiser at this tier is a proper heavy cruiser. So a very small pool of contemporaries does Neptune have. And when you put her in that pool, 45,000 HP is pretty average, right? She's right where she should be. There's a couple of ships that are way on the bottom end of this. I'm looking at Sejong, like yikes. Doesn't even, in fact, neither of the Pan Asian ships even have 30,000 hit points. You at least have 45. Like, that's really solid. So you're okay. You're okay in this department. Torpedo protection, 13% is, ironically, on the high end for this tier. 16% Donskoy runs away with this category, but 13% is okay. But again, 13% is not anything to get excited about. If you're a cruiser, guys, don't take torpedoes. Ship has hydro, like, use it. If you think you're going to get torpedoed, just try not to get torpedoed. You'll regret it. Armor. Okay, we're going to have to spend some time here because this is where most of the glass cannon conversation takes place. If you recall, previous ships in the line, Leander, Fiji, Edinburgh, all had relatively large citadels, but they all sat kind of right at the water line or basically just a bit of the citadel peaked up above the water line, okay? Neptune does not suffer this problem. Look at this thing. Look at it. This citadel is, not only is it ginormous, again, like Edinburgh, from the forward barbette, put the barbettes back, from the forward barbette to the after barbette. So, like, literally, what is this, like 80% of the overall length of the ship at the waterline is citadel space? Yikes. Look at this section in the middle. It's huge, and it sticks up significantly above the waterline. Significantly. Like, if you were to wipe out this section in the center, the Citadel sitting pretty low here, by the magazines. This is still higher than the Citadel comes out of the water for Edinburgh, but it's not so bad, is it? It's a little worse, but it's not catastrophic. This section in the middle is catastrophic. And and it's mainly the catastrophic because this is where you're going to get aimed at, right? This is where the opposing battleships and big heavy cruisers that want to murder you are going to fire their shells. It's exactly where they want to place them, and that's exactly where you don't want them to go. Further complicating matters is when the ship is, say, stern on or bow on, you have this beautiful little shell trap plate right here. This little thwart ship plate, 76 millimeters. It is very possible for ships, especially at longer ranges, to arc shells in over your turrets. It's easier on the bow because you've got more space to do it. It's a little more challenging on the aft unless they can get them to either side of the barbette. But this flat plate will absolutely occasionally catch shells. Even when you're narrow running away from something that shouldn't be able to citadel you anymore, they will still find a way to citadel you through this plate right here. So Neptune is exceedingly fragile. Even worse. Oh yes, there's more, ladies and gentlemen. Her plate, her belt armor is now lower than you had at Tier 7 and Tier 8. Tier 7, Tier 8, Fiji, Edinburgh, you had 114 millimeters. Now here at Neptune, down to 102. It's only a half an inch, right? We've gone from 4.5 inches of plate to 4 inches of plate. It's not like either one of these is amazing, but it's kind of like an extra kick in the teeth, right? So your Citadel is huge, even larger than the ships you've been playing, and you have less armor than you're used to. Neptune does not like to get shot. She hates getting shot. She really hates getting shot by things with battleship caliber guns. Here's the problem. She's not that stealthy. Let's move on. Oh, also, one more thing. As a light cruiser, you do not have bow extremities that will allow you to tank much of anything. So, we talk about heavy cruisers, the German heavy cruisers, the American heavy cruisers. You get those bows you can tank. Yeah, you don't have this problem. You are a light cruiser. Your bow armor is Swiss cheese to basically battleships that shoot at you. Okay, so don't count on that for anything. So now let's talk about one of Neptune's other problem characteristics, and that is her concealment. A full stealth rig Neptune on the surface is 10.3 kilometers. You'll notice, coming from Edinburgh, this is a massive step backwards, right? Edinburgh, we got her down to what I believe it was 9.2, 9 or 9.2, something like that, right? She had nearly a kilometer to play with between her detection radius and her radar bubble of 10 kilometers. Neptune never gets this advantage. 10.3 kilometers is as low as you can get the stealth on this ship. That's max. And you only have, again, if you decide to equip the radar, 10-kilometer radar. So any destroyer that you are able to radar has seen you coming for a little bit. If you take smoke, the smoke firing penalty you see there, 6.6 kilometers. Sometimes that is a real problem. So that's also a number you kind of have to keep in mind. If you're getting charged in your own smoke, you've got to stay frosty for ships that do that. A smart battleship player, when forced into a mid or close range engagement with you while you're in your smoke, knowing that your guns are less effective when he's bow on to you, will probably try and charge you. Now you have torpedoes, right? But let's say it's a hydro battleship. Let's say it's a Friedrich der Grosse or a Pommern. That is not an engagement you want to hang around for. So much of getting mileage out of Neptune's various characteristics is understanding which engagements you're okay to stand and fight, and which engagements it's like, oh, I got to get the hell out of here. Some of that you can look at some numbers and go, okay, make a judgment call. And some of those, unfortunately, it sucks to say, you're going to have to play it a time or two and get your teeth kicked in before you're like, okay, so that's not going to work. I can't do that. And that's just a quirk of learning to play the ship. So 10.3 on the surface, very, very bad. As we have also been seeing, the 35.2 knots of speed here you see is with a speed flag. Neptune is a slight bit faster than her predecessors. I'll give her this, right? She gets a full other knot of speed. Her base speed, 33.5 on the surface. That's nice. She's a little faster. That's not bad. It's not amazing, right? And it's right in line with all the other light cruisers. Donskoy is kind of the runaway here. She has 36 knots to play with. Just about everybody else is anywhere from 33 to 34, basically 33 or 34. And you're right in the middle of that, so you're right where you should be in this engagement. In this category. But it does mean that once you're spotted, if you're spotted by, I'm going to just spotted by a French destroyer, you're not getting away from that guy. He can keep up with you with a cup of coffee in one hand and a bagel in the other and not even trying. Right? Or excuse me, a croissant in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Right? It's just not hard. You're not going to run away from anybody. Your smoke is the only way you're going to be able to break that line of sight, assuming you took smoke. One more thing about the concealment bubble, I should have kind of compared her to her contemporaries, as I like to do. This is not good. Most other light cruisers in this tier, again, we're talking about Santander, Sejong, Seattle, all of these ships have better stealth than you. The only advantage that you sort of have is that basically none of them have access to 10-kilometer radar, I think, other than Santander. And Santander actually has the same detection that you do. But like Seattle has better detection, but only gets 9-kilometer radar. Interesting trade-off. Donskoy, of course, loses this category. Technically a light cruiser at 12.5 on the surface. So you do beat that out, but basically everybody else makes you look a little silly. So there's a lot of cruisers in your matchmaking bracket that will outspot you as well, including some really, really particularly nasty ones. Things like Baltimore. Yikes. Not Buffalo and Des Moines, thank God. But Baltimore will definitely outspot you by about 500 meters, and that can really hurt if you get caught at the wrong time. Okay, we spent all this time detailing the problems with survivability and detection. What am I getting in exchange, right? I'm paying a lot. I'm essentially a glass cannon. What am I getting? Well, you are getting a ridiculous amount of firepower. Your main battery is comprised of 4 triple-barreled turrets, the exact same turrets, guns, shells, all the stuff you've been firing up to this point. What's improved? Well, for starters, finally, you get a noteworthy buff to your rate of fire. Take a look at that reload time. That is unbuffed. That's not without main battery mod 3 in or nothing. 4.8 seconds. So if you recall, all the way back at Leander, Tier 6, we started at 9 seconds. We crept down to 8 seconds at Fiji. We crept down to 7.5 seconds at Edinburgh. Each of those ships in their own ways, particularly Fiji and Edinburgh, feel very, very close in terms of firepower. When you start playing a Neptune, you're going to go, holy crap, look how fast I murder things. Because your guns now fire 33%, 35% faster than they used to the tier below you. Same guns, but you get to use them a lot more. And that's before you put main battery mod 3 in, which would lower this reload down to 4.2 seconds. It is lunacy. The AP alpha strike damage of these guns, you're seeing it right there. DPM, 480,000 DPM. Like, from an AP perspective, that destroys every other tier 9 light cruiser in this category, right? Now, the payoff for that is because you don't have HE, right? A ship like Seattle or a ship like Sejong that has a better rate of fire. Actually, I don't think Seattle has a better rate of fire, but certainly Sejong is pretty comparable or a little better, right? Gets AP, but those are smaller shells for Sejong. And you have 6-inch guns. Sejong only has 5-inch guns. There's some trade-off here. Bottom line is you have a stupid amount of damage that you can crank out of these guns. It's crazy, okay? And I'll reference one more time. If you're coming into this video a little late, you haven't watched their videos in the line, please go back and watch the section of the Leander video that explains how British light cruiser shells work. If you don't understand that, you're going to struggle with this ship. Let's just assume you skipped the line up to this point or something, or you're just trying to learn how to play your Neptune and you haven't played British light cruisers in a while. Go watch that 5 or 6 minute segment. It will answer a lot of questions and help you understand how to use these guns. All right, so you have basically what amounts to best in tier main battery DPM. Now, it's not best necessarily performance, right? And we've talked about this. Broadside targets, ships that show you a big angle, anywhere from 65, 75 degrees or anywhere in between. You'll get great amounts of full penetration damage on them. You'll really rack up the damage. Ships that get narrower than that, go bow on or stern on to you, you're going to struggle. Doesn't matter what class they are. Even a destroyer, you're going to struggle at that angle. You'll bounce a lot of things. So smart players will know how to fight these things, okay? But it takes time to turn a ship, doesn't it? If you catch a battleship, let's say broadside, or turning into you, or turning away from you, angled towards you, and he wants to turn out, and your guns now fire a lot faster, you're going to be astonished how much more damage you rack up on that guy versus what you would have gotten at Edinburgh. So keep that in mind. That is a huge asset of this ship. Here's another one, torpedo tubes. You went from having a triple on each side, right, which is what you had at Fiji and what you had at Edinburgh. You had a quad way back at Leander. Well, guess what, guys? The quads are back, and you got more of them. You have 8 torpedo tubes on each side of this ship. This is over double the torpedo firepower that you've had for the last 2 tiers. It's basically the same torpedoes. 10 knots, basically 16,500 damage on the Alpha. 10 kilometers of range, 16,500 on the Alpha, 62 knots, and so on and so on. Same torpedo, more or less, right? Certainly basically the same torpedo you had down at tier 8. But now I have 8 of them. This is noteworthy. Now, again, I come back to, as I pointed out in the Edinburgh sample game that I played, you're probably not going to win a close engagement with just about anybody by torpedoing them in the face. You do not have the armor. You probably don't have more than likely, you don't have the armor or the health pool to sustain a torpedo charge against an opposing ship. However, ships that choose to push into you, ships that are, you're in smoke and they're running broadside to you, or they're trying to jockey for position, you will be surprised how often you'll be able to land torpedoes. And because you're British, you have the option to fire the little conga line torpedoes. In Neptune, because your torpedo range is only 10 kilometers and you have 10.3 detection, these torpedoes will sometimes feel a little superfluous. I would still encourage you to use them. They will not constitute a significant chunk of your damage. You are not a torpedo cruiser. But you have to remember that they exist, right? You kind of, when you play Edinburgh and Fiji, maybe you forget about them a little bit because they're not that impactful. Well, at Neptune, they can be very impactful, okay? It's all about understanding when you can use them, how to deploy them, and not forgetting that you have them, okay? So don't forget that they're there. Depth charges. Yep, you've still got roll-off depth charges back here on the stern of the ships, although actually I think these are K-bombs. Yep, these look like K-bombs. I've got a 4 K-bomb pattern here. Yep, it looks like we fire that one. I've got 2 charges, 4 and a charge, so go us. These are British depth charges. They hit like trains. I hope and pray that you never find yourself in a position where you need to be using these against an opposing submarine. You have hydro, so you should be able to land them on target. But I hope you don't get there unless it's late in the game and you're just trying to hunt him down for convenience. Under no circumstances, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, should you be charging forward early in a game trying to hunt an opposing submarine in your light cruiser with 10-kilometer detection radius. Dear God, please don't do this. Especially not this one that has basically the next best thing to no armor and a massive citadel. You will regret that decision. Don't forget you have the depth charges, but do not go out of your way to use them unless you are kind of cornered into it. AA defense. Now, here's where the line really starts to take a wild turn. Up to this point, right, tier 6, 7, and 8, your AA has been okay. It's been adequate. I think adequate is basically average, is the words I keep using to describe it. Well, guess what? Starting in Neptune, we go from average to OMG amazeballs. For starters, you're going to be putting up, and actually let me get rid of the commander here, because this is going to make a difference, right? You're going to be putting up 9 flak puffs. Is that right? Yeah, 9 base, I think. No, am I putting up, that's only, yeah, when they do, yeah, it's okay. So yeah, so 9 base, 9 flak puffs right out of the can, right, just by default. That's a lot of flak. That's a lot of flak. Now you're seeing the buff number here, a little over 20, almost a little over 2K damage. That's, I think, with the AA flag on and everything. So your base is going to be a little less than this, but the bottom line is you're putting up a lot of flak. Here's the other thing. Look how far out your outer bubble goes. Nearly 7 kilometers to your outer AA bubble. This is huge. You're going to start putting up flak, and you're going to be putting up a lot of flak long before a lot of other ships. Now, what's the catch to all of this? Neptune hates being spotted. Neptune hates being spotted, doesn't she? Look how fragile I am, right? I don't want some battleship shooting at me at 18 kilometers and dropping 20-inch shells through my pathetic citadel, right? So when planes spot me, I want them to die. I do not have defensive fire, but I do have really, really good AA. Look at that outer bubble. Look at that outer bubble number. Out to 7 kilometers, this ship, at the way I have it configured, 270 DPS. Des Moines could only dream of a number like that. Now, the mid-range is where it starts to fall off. Mid-range is where most ships pack a stupid amount of AA punch. Unfortunately here, Neptune is not getting that, which feels a little bad, right? Because she has these 113 millimeter dual turrets. These are like main battery turrets that you would find over on Daring or Jutland in the British destroyer line, right? These are pretty good little dual-purpose guns. But unfortunately, they just don't seem to add up to much in the middle range. Although I think actually her mid-range probably comes off the back of these automated Bofors. I looked at the wrong thing. Yeah. So this is where your mid-range aura comes in, and she only has a 10 of these floating around, and for whatever reason, that's just doesn't equate to a great mid-range bubble. Short-range bubble is okay, but that's not really where you want your punch, right? So Neptune has a ton of flak and an amazing outer bubble. Her mid-range bubble is a little less awesome, but trust me, a carrier who flies in your AA screen into your bubble is really going to regret his life choices, okay? Especially if it's a tier 8 carrier. If it's a tier 10 carrier, depending on the carrier, like an FDR or something, well, he's going to get beat up, but he's probably not going to lose as many planes as you wish he would. But trust me, man, I have had plenty of gains in Neptune where I have murdered 35, 40, 50 aircraft. It's really not that difficult with a small amount of investment. And we'll talk more about that in a minute when we start talking about modules. Speaking of, let's move on. Okay, so let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about consumables. All right, so with consumables, you're going to have the same age-old question that you had down at Tier 8. Do I play smoke or do I play radar? Now, the one thing that you lose here at Tier 9, you'll notice there are no aircraft facilities aboard this ship. So no longer do I have the option for fighter or spotter plane. I have only the option for smoke or radar. Again, which of these you choose will dictate how the ship plays. It's entirely up to you. There is no wrong answer. There is only what you prefer to play. As you can see here, I have taken radar. I would encourage you to, just like Neptune, I would encourage you to try radar in closed formats, right? If you're playing this ship in ranked, you're playing this ship in, I don't know, clan battles or something, whatever, where there's not 12 other ships to shoot at you, I think radar is really cool. In random battles, this is a huge risk. If you're in a div with like a smoke destroyer, give it a go. But if you're on your own, man, this is a risk. I do this on occasion to be a troll and to laugh at people because they don't expect it. But truth be told, if you're just grinding this ship out on your own, it's way safer to play with smoke. Way safer to play with smoke. So just make that choice and build the ship accordingly. Modules, you're going to want to stick, upgrades. You're going to want to stick with main armaments mod here in the first slot. Magazine or auxiliary, I mean, you don't want auxiliary. Magazine, I mean, if you're really worried, you don't have the Juliet Charlies. I suppose this has some value to it, but I think main armaments mod is where you want to be. If you do take radar, you want surveillance radar here in this slot. You want to maximize the radar duration you're getting. You see there, I'm getting over 47 seconds of radar, and I am firing every 4.8 seconds. I'm going to get anywhere between 9 and 10 salvos at the opposing. Anybody who's spotted by this radar, that has the potential to be just deadly, depending on the positioning and how the timing of the radar works out, okay? If you don't play radar, I would encourage you to take Hydro. This Hydro mod will benefit you hugely if you're going to camp in your smoke. If you don't have the coal to invest in either one of those, I really would encourage you to try engine room protection. I don't think DCSM is really going to get you much here on a light cruiser. You have some pretty decent options here in slot 3, okay? The turret traverse is not amazing. You seeing there 15 seconds, and I think that's a little buffed. I do have a buff out of the commander. So if you wanted to be even better than that, main battery mod 2 is more than acceptable. I think that's an excellent pick. I would not invest anything in the secondary battery. I would not invest anything in the torpedo tubes. Yes, you do have more torpedoes. No, you are not a torpedo cruiser. I just don't think this is not the play, in my opinion. Smoke generator. Again, if you're going to play Smoke Neptune, this is a possibility. Just remember that this module is only going to get, I'd have to run the numbers. It's going to get you a little more smoke. It's not going to get you as much as you might wish, but you are going to get a little more smoke duration out of it. So there's some possibilities here. You see here, I'm running aiming systems mod. Why am I running this one on a light cruiser? Raptor, your guns reload super fast. Yes, but how many times have we talked about your shells? The angle of the opposing ship matters tremendously. The amount of damage I'm going to get when these shells go down range. So when I have a ship where I want it, I catch a destroyer broadside at 8 kilometers and he's stuck in my radar, I want to get as many shells on target as I can on that little schmuck before he disappears. And so I'm running aiming systems mod. AA guns modification, if you want to lean into the AA a little more, a perfectly valid choice. You'll get a lot of mileage out of this, particularly if you div up with a carrier or you play on the Asia server where there's tons and tons of carriers. You'll get great work out of AA guns modification 1. So about the only 2 I really would advise against would probably be secondary. I wouldn't take this, and I wouldn't take torpedo tubes. The other 4, all totally viable choices. Pick one that suits you. Steering gears is my choice for slot 4. I think without it, your rudder is a little on the slow side. Even now, your rudder is going to feel a little slow. Even with it, you're under just barely under 9 seconds. DCSM2 is not going to be amazing. Depth charges, dear God, I really hope you never have to use this, so I would not recommend this in a Neptune. So yeah, to me, steering is pretty much the only good choice you've got here in slot 4. Slot 5, man, you got to maximize your concealment. You're already more detectable than you want to be. You got to get that number as low as you can. To me, this is the only valid choice. If you're really, really, really a ballsy, crazy person, you could look into some kind of double rudder Neptune build, but I just don't think you're going to enjoy it. I don't think you're going to live long enough to enjoy it. If you play this way and you got bigger balls than I do, and more power to you, but most players are not going to have any success with this, so I can't recommend it. Now, in slot 6, you have basically 3 possible options here. Again, I would avoid the torpedo tubes. You are not a torpedo cruiser. The torpedoes are great, use them, but you don't want to build for them, okay? Main battery mod 3 is the obvious good choice. Your traverse speed goes down a little bit, but your traverse speed is already not that bad, and you're going to shave about another half second off your gun reload. This is pretty solid. I don't think you can go wrong here, okay? You could take gun range. We didn't talk about it, but your main battery range is only 16.5 kilometers. Now, truth be told, for a light cruiser, that's not too shabby. I won't complain about this. Here's the trick. Out past about 12-ish kilometers, your shells take forever to fall back to Earth. You've probably seen that playing Fiji and Edinburgh up to this point, right? You've been firing these shells. The shells are not, these are not different shells or different ballistics. So leading these shells at even higher ranges is just incredibly challenging. If you're firing at a stationary target, sure. But if you're trying to hit a moving target at like 18 kilometers with these shells, good effing luck, right? I cannot recommend it. It is a viable choice if you want to play that way, but I do not recommend it. I do recommend Auxiliary Armaments Mod 2. Raptor, we're not building for auxiliary mods. What? You just told us not to build anything on auxiliaries. Yes, but here's why. You don't really care about the secondary battery, right? Your secondaries are kind of trash. You don't really care. That's not why you take this. You take this for the AA buff. Continuous A damage from A shell explosions. The last bit about getting more flak when defensive AA fire is up obviously will not do any good. But the 15% straight flat buff to your AA is significant. Combine that with the AA flag, I'm running 20% across the board. Let me show you the numbers without. So if my base AA, right, 220 in each zone. That's not too shabby. It's not bad. It's okay, right? But a flag and a module, and bam, now I'm up near 270, right? Yikes. That's a big buff. And a lot of carrier players are not ready for you to have that kind of AA power. Plus, your flak hits harder. And remember, what almost all carrier players take the ones that debuff your flak and your A and everything. Now you're kind of counteracting it. Remember, AA is just a math equation, guys. If you're not buffing your AA, the carrier player's ahead of you. So if you buff your AA, you sort of at least are kind of counteracting the buffs that the carrier player has put into his plane health. And Neptune hates being spotted by planes. Even if you're spotted for a little bit, a carrier player is going to go, oh my God, that guy's A is rough, and he's going to run away from you. That's what you want. You want him to go away. So even if you don't get to murder a ton of planes out of this, just using that extra A to push planes away from you when you don't want to be spotted, makes this a worthwhile investment. It helps keep you alive, and that's why I use this one. If you want pure raw firepower, guys, main battery mod 3, you cannot go wrong. I don't think you'll ever regret it. But for me, I like Auxiliary Armaments 2 because my AA goes up to a really, really big number. Flags are pretty simple. You've seen this before. Juliet Charlie, Sierra Mike, November Foxtrot, India Delta. Sierra Bravo, I'm running for the extra hydro duration. I'm running Juliet Whiskey Unit 1. This is kind of negligible. We talked about how she's not really a torpedo cruiser. I could probably get rid of this. And then, of course, November Echo set of 7. There's really not much else in here that's worth running. These are basically the only 7 flags that you might ever consider running, and I'll be honest, that's even probably questionable, right? So yeah, that's kind of flag build is pretty straightforward on British light cruisers. All right, so that just leaves us with commander skills. The commander build that I'm using here, again, I'm using one of the Dunkirk brothers because I want the 3 buffs that I'm really looking for, again, are down here, the same ones that I wanted for Edinburgh. I want the better turret traverse, I want the better consumables reload time, and I want the better consumables duration. If you can invest, I think it's the doubloons into buying one of these guys and skilling him up, I highly encourage it. Beyond that, the skill choices are going to look almost exactly like what you've been playing up to this point, right? Obviously, I would probably go grease the gears, focus fire training, probably superintendent for my first one, and then Concealment Expert for the first 10 points. After that, you're going to want to look into Adrenaline Rush and Survivability Expert and the skills that are going to lean into your consumables. Remember, these ships live and die by the value you get out of those consumables. The only other one that you might want to consider, and I'm going to say this here because for the same reason that I've been extolling the virtues of the AA mod in slot 6, is this guy right here. You're really not going to get much use out of the ASW portion of it, but putting another 25% more into your AA is just going to make it go crazy. There's actually a valid argument to get rid of focus fire training and scrounge up another point and buff and put those points in here. It's going to feel excessive. And in games without a carrier, you're going to go, oh, I've wasted those 4 points. I get it. But in a game with a carrier, it can absolutely make the difference between getting an A defense middle or at least not being spotted when you don't want to be spotted. And that is a noteworthy investment in skill points. Now, one thing I forgot to talk about at Edinburgh, and I really have to point it out here at Neptune, specialized repair teams. British light cruisers starting at tier 8, and again, it's my mistake for leaving it out talking about at Edinburgh, is you get basically a super heal, the same way that the British battleships do at the high end of the British battleship line. This means that you can take a tremendous amount of full penetration damage and whatnot and still recover huge, vast chunks of your health. Neptune desperately needs this. Here's the trick. It doesn't recover a ton of Citadel damage. So if you take a bunch of Citadel damage, this heal is not going to just magically save you, okay? There's going to be a big chunk of your ship you cannot repair. But if you can confine that damage to full pen damage, fire damage, flood damage, HE, full penetration damage through your casemate armor, whatever, this is going to be a tremendous asset in helping you stay in a game. All right, guys, we've talked about the glass cannon. I've walked you around. Let's go show you an example of what you can get up to in this ship once you understand what you're doing. All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to our test game here in Tier 9 British light cruiser, HMS Neptune. Now, as you have a quick look over the team lineups, you can tell I've come up lucky. We are top tier in this match. And that actually is going to play a part. This is the kind of matchmaking that Neptune really, really likes to see. But I also want to point out something here. I've spawned behind a friendly Fletcher, and he and I are never going to exchange words, but that Fletcher and I are going to become best friends because I am playing Radar Neptune in a random battle. Now, I'm not going to lie. Let me pause this for a minute. As we said earlier in the video, I do not recommend this, okay? If you're going to take Neptune into a ranked setting or some kind of competitive setting where there's fewer ships to shoot at you, right? A 6v6, a 5v5, Radar Neptune becomes a much more powerful, much more interesting choice in those formats. But in 12v12 random open battles, I do not recommend the Radar unless you are a particular crazy man like me. Now, in this game, actually, I'll caveat that by one more thing. Or unless you div up with a friend who brings his American destroyer, such as this Fletcher. Now, much of what's going to happen in this game is going to happen from behind this Fletcher's smoke, and I'm never going to once ask him for it. This is the kind of team play that I wish I could get in every game of World of Warships. This guy, without even ask, and I presume he's using the new functionality that allows him to see my consumable list, he just knows that I need the smoke. And I'm also going to do him a huge solid as well, because by having me close aboard and nearby, he is a lot less of prey, let's say, to the opposing destroyers, each of which in their own way outclass him a little bit, right? The kid has the same gun power, but can outlast him because of the heal, and the Kitakaze, if he runs into the Kitakaze at the wrong time, he can just absolutely get flat out murdered. But with me nearby, he's got a buddy who can help him win either one of those fights as the game launches. So we're spawning here to the north side of Seychelles. I want to talk for a little bit a minute about this map. I am not a tremendous fan of Seychelles. It's not the worst map in the game. In my opinion, that title still belongs to Okinawa. But Seychelles is still a very difficult map to play, at least for me. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this one. This central island here off my port side that dominates the area along the western side of the map sort of makes the map feel like it plays a little bit kind of like Shatter used to, or still does in some cases, depending on which cap configuration you get. But this island is so low, and there's a couple of saddle points in the middle that ships that play far enough back can still get shells over it to get to you. Now, it does afford radar cruisers, such as myself, such as the opposing Baltimore or Santander, the opportunity to get close to these caps and make a real nuisance of themselves. And so this Fletcher is taking a big risk early. But again, I'm here and I'm going to make sure that that risk pays off for both of us. We don't have a battleship over here. The Gneiss now that had spawned is bailing back towards mid. The Scharnhorst who had spawned towards mid is coming to us. So it's going to be just me and this Fletcher for a little bit. He picks up on the surface an opposing Kitakaze, and I decide, well, this is literally what I'm here for, boys. You bring me along to murder destroyers between the radar and the guns, and this Kitakaze is about to have a really, really, really unfortunate day. He's sailing in a straight line, allowing me to chew him up. Look how quickly I've taken 10,000 damage off of this guy. 13,000 damage. Over 3 salvos and half of his health is evaporated. This is the kind of pain that you can inflict upon opposing destroyers. Now, I am making perhaps a bit of a mistake here. The Kitakaze has done the correct thing. He has shown me his stern. He got narrow, and so now any salvos I take at him are going to net me probably around 1,000, maybe 1,500 damage if I'm really, really lucky. I'm going to get a ton of bounces and maybe a couple of full pins through his what little bit of superstructure passes on a destroyer. So my radar is not up yet. The Kitakaze's gun bloom is what's got him lit. The Fletcher is engaging him on the surface, backed up by the Harbin and the Scharnhorst. Actually, I'm not sure the Harbin is in on this, but I think he's got shots through some of the island over on my left. I have changed my target to the Hipper that's coming in. The Hipper is a much better shot for me. Look at that angle, right? Look at this. Now we're going to go ahead and pop the radar, mostly because I want to see the Hipper, but it's going to keep the Kitakaze lit for a spell as well. Look at the salvos I'm getting on this Hipper. There goes 8,000. There goes 5,000. Here goes another 4,000. And by the time this guy realizes what the trouble he's in, just like the Kitakaze, half of his health has disappeared. People rag on Neptune, rightfully so. The ship is very squishy, and once it gets shot at, it is in real trouble. But the firepower upgrade that you get from Edinburgh cannot be understated. If you underestimate a Neptune player in the hands of somebody who understands what the ship is capable of, and God forbid has their gun reload in slot 3, which I don't, right? This could be even worse for these guys. You will pay a steep price in health, trust me. This Hipper, of course, realizing, yep, he's also got to get narrow, so he bails. My radar still got him lit. I'm going to get a little more chip damage on this guy, but he is going to back off. And so for the minute, with very little battleship support, in fact, with very little support whatsoever, this Fletcher and I have held this flank against a Kitakaze and a Hipper, more or less on our own. Team play, ladies and gentlemen. It's OP. Totally broken in World of Warships. Now, let's point out a couple other things as the game starts to develop here. For starters, look at the minimap. You see the Baltimore. Somebody caught a glimpse of him down there in G5, his bow angling this way. I have to be that is probably one of the most dangerous things on the board for me. Chances are he's got radar, and his American piercing will destroy me. I have to be very, very careful of where I position my ship far enough forward of this island off my port side to give him shots, because you know he's going to do kind of what I'm doing, snuggled up next to it, looking for ways to punish me or this Fletcher. The Hipper is bailing. The Colorado is moving in. The Lepanto is back there. You can see on the right side of the screen in that smoke cloud somewhere. That is Lepanto smoke. I don't know where that guy is right now, but sooner or later he'll take a shot. His AP is perhaps less of a threat to me than you might imagine, because Italian AP has so much penetration, he has a very high possibility of overpenning even my Citadel. However, his SAP will do horrible things to me if I am caught snoozing. He took a blind fire shot in the smoke a minute ago with his SAP, came up empty, and the Fletcher and the Kitakaze bump into each other, but I'm not going to get much out of this before the Kitakaze wisely decides to bail behind some smoke of his own. And the Fletcher still chugging along over here about half HP as he and I kind of continue to do our thing. All right, tied on ships, up a cap. Team over at D has done good work. C remains wide open. I've got my hydro ticking. I did that once I popped into the smoke because Kitakaze torpedo cert, and I really don't want to take any. So I've got these torpedoes well picked up, and of course my Scharnhorst is going to just sail right into them like, yay. And then my Scharnhorst is not going to do the smart thing right here. He's not going to turn around. There's no reason, there's no need for him to move up, and he's going to do it anyway. Because he's a Scharnhorst, and that's what you do when you're in a Scharnhorst, I guess. I don't know. So I'm going to make about the only play I can right here. I'm going to take some... I'm radared anyway, so I'm going to take some shots at this Baltimore. The angle is terrible. I don't expect to get much, but I'll get a little bit of chip damage here as I'm going to cut back towards kind of the cover of the island off my bow. The Harbin, friendly Harbin to his credit, is just going to stay in there. Scharnhorst, finally realizing his predicament, turns around. I'm going to get into a bit of an open water gunfight with this Lepanto, who is still firing his SAP. That's actually bad for me. But right now, the best play I can be making is running full speed for the island, which I'm sort of doing at a bit of an angle, and farming some health off this Lepanto, who again doesn't seem to understand the threat that my guns pose. I'm just chunking this guy for 3 to 4,000 a salvo here by getting full pens. I tried to juke that salvo by slowing down. I failed, but I did manage to juke the Colorado salvo in exchange. His SAP comes through, gets some full pins up through my casemate. I take about 8 or 9k. Life goes on. We're going to turn out here. This is going to deny shots to pretty much everybody on the opposing team right now, but the Lepanto. I'm having to use Neptune's speed games. You got to remember, these British light cruisers have great acceleration rates and terrible deceleration rates. So if you want to slow down, you got to plan well ahead. But if you want to accelerate, baby, put your foot down and these ships will go. I'm going to go dark here. There's no need for me to get shot at right now. Okay. And look at this, ladies and gentlemen. The hero Fletcher coming back with another smoke. Now, he's laying this smoke towards me, coming from the edge of the map back towards me, which is perhaps a bit suboptimal because it means I'm going to turn and put my bow and go to the far end of it and be in the end that is already ticking, right? It's going to have less time on it. But it is American smoke, so it's excellent, and I'm going to go take advantage of it. The other disadvantage of him taking this position is I have no spotter. Who is spotting for the team on this flank right now? No one. We have no eyes. So I'm going to put my sonar up. Again, what does smoke do? It attracts torpedoes. Smoke is torpedo magnets. So I'm going to put my smoke up, and we're going to chill right here for a minute. And then I think I'm going to get a little suspicious. I'm like, you know what? We haven't seen the Kitakazi in a while. Why don't we look around for him? Just to be on the safe side. And oh, look who I have found. Now, who else did I find? I found the Baltimore. He counter-radars me almost immediately, but I'm already turning. He's not going to be able to get the angles he wants to get the big full pins off his American piercing. It's not going to stop him from taking the shots. And he's going to get some hits, but they're not going to be the catastrophic Citadel hits that he's looking for. He's going to get a reset on one of my turrets. We're going to clean up the Kitakazi here, who literally just got caught out trying to make a good play at the wrong time. Now, I have to accelerate. I've got big torpedoes coming in from my port side. I cannot sit here, and the Baltimore radar is a problem, so I have to watch my angle. I can't continue to turn to starboard without coughing up a huge chunk of my health to the Baltimore. As it is, he gets a little bit, but Neptune's super heal is still up to the challenge. His radar runs out. He overshoots me with this salvo. I'm going to get a little more chip damage out of him here. One rack of conga line torps back towards him, and then we're going to duck back into the relative safety of the smoke. Now, I'm playing behind the smoke right now. The Colorado has entered the chat. That guy's upper works and casemate are just a smorgasbord, a feast for my shells. I'm going to farm the bejesus out of this guy. Just about every time I pull the trigger, if I lay these shells correctly, this guy should lose between 3,000 and 6,000 HP. So just, and that happens every, what right now, every 4.5 seconds or so? Yeah, about every 4.5 seconds. Now, there's full pin damage. He will be able to heal almost all of it back. I'm going to throw the other rack of torps because why not? There's 7k, right? Again, it's all about how you get these shells to lead and how the dispersion clumps up. But Colorado is not fast. So leading these shells is pretty straightforward. I'm aiming almost directly at his deck line, and you can see them plunging in. I'm getting great shots on his casemate and his superstructure. My smoke is expiring. We're going to go ahead and accelerate. We're going to power through it to get back behind cover here. We get back-to-back 5k salvos. I'm just milking this damage for all it's worth. This is the kind of thing that if you play smoke Neptune, you can also do. But you have to, if you're going to play a smoke cruiser, you have to be conscious of where your team is and make sure that you always have a spotter. The most common mistake that I see smoke cruiser players make is they do not allow themselves spotting. When they smoke up, they're acting as their own spotter, and when they smoke up, they end up blinding themselves. Right now, the Fletcher over on the 10 line, doing all the work I need in terms of spotting. Now I'm behind this island. I got a little bit of hard cover, and the angle to the Colorado's starting to get bad, so I'm not going to get amazing salvos on him at this point. Team's doing quite well. We have great board control. We're tied on ships. So we're trading evenly with the opposing team. My torpedoes are going to run out just shy of being able to claim a little bit of hit there off this Colorado. Friendly San Luis is going to take the channel behind me, trying to get some HE shells downrange on this Colorado. And now that he's opening the range a bit, my guns will elevate to get shells over this island. The angle is terrible. I'm going to be plunging these into his superstructure. I might get 3 to 2 or 3K there. But watch he's going to make a bit of a mistake here. He's going to continue his turn back to starboard, and that's going to open up all the flat broadside, all the penetration damage I want. I think the salvo that kills him is already in the air. Should be that one right there. Yeah. So by then, I've already changed to the Hipper, who's also showing me a brilliant angle. I don't have the lead right, though. Hipper might be slow, but so are my shells. So we're having to put a pretty solid lead out here. Again, you saw what I did to the Hipper earlier. There's a 6K hit. This guy apparently has forgotten what I did to him earlier. Well, it's too late, and he's done. So now the game is going to enter a slightly different stage. I cannot engage the Baltimore at point-blank range. I'm going to pause the game for a minute. If you guys remember the last video, right, Edinburgh, where I tried to engage New Orleans at point-blank range and I paid the price for it, I've learned my lesson. I am not going out there to charge that Baltimore. The San Luis holds all the cards in that engagement. He ought to be able to easily burn that guy down between his heel, and the Fletcher can spot for him, and the Fletcher can torpedo hit. The two of those guys should be able to clean up the Baltimore. So now I originally make this maneuver thinking I'm going to turn back and go help them, but then I look at the board and realize, no. Look at the rest of the map. I got a Harbin, a Colorado, and an Orkan versus Irian Takahashi, Eindracht, and my old buddy, the Lepanto, back there. We have a 300-ish point lead, 350-point lead, which feels pretty solid, but you never trust your teammates, do you? I mean, I wouldn't, so let's not. Colorado's position is not bad. My problem with him is he's getting farmed by 2 different HE cruisers. The Eindracht has basically declined to engage, and I can't force him to. I can radar him, potentially. We'll see how that works out. And so I'm not expecting the Colorado to be around very long. He's just not playing this engagement very smartly. He needs to be retreating and not driving at these guys. And now that the Lepanto's AP is starting to come in, you see those shells coming in off the right hand of the screen, that is more potential for the Colorado to bite it. In fact, I'd say it's highly likely that the Colorado is going to bite it here very, very soon. Either between the AP, the SAP, or just fires. I don't expect him to be with us very long. Baltimore is going to go down here. San Luis is going to pick him up. And that opens our western flank open to the Fletcher, as I'm going to radar the Eindracht because I want to know where he's at. I'm sort of thinking I might be able to give the Colorado a shot on him, but I think he's playing too far back for that to happen for the Colorado. Okay, so let's talk about here. Again, we have a huge lead, 500 points, and we're up 2 ships. But we are now out of battleships. Well, we're about to be out of battleships. This Colorado's not going to be with us very long. The Lepanto back there has a lot of HP, and the HE cruisers are doing a pretty good job of managing their health. So we have to play this very smart. I'm going to slow down here for a moment. I'm going to pause. Obviously, that salvo did not go anywhere. I'm trying to get shells over this island. I got to get the lead on the Lepanto correct. Here we go. So I can get shells on him and start taking chunks of his HP away. We're going to do to him exactly what we were doing earlier, exactly what we did to the Colorado. We're just going to farm him for all the full pen AP damage that I can get. Unfortunately, he's just a touch outside my radar range, and with the death of the Colorado, I have no spotting. Eindracht looks like he's going to come to play. This is a bit of a mistake. I'm trying to fire these torpedoes like one rack on each ship, and I end up sort of overlapping to the point where they both go down the same corridor, which is not ideal. I should have spread them out to cover a wider area. Now, the Lepanto was going to come around the corner and pick me up on the surface anyway, so I'm just plugging away with the guns. And I'm doing something now that is perhaps inadvisable. It's the second time this game I've done it. I'm getting into an open water gunfight with a battleship in a Neptune. I'm asking for a little bit of pain here, right? But if you look, he just took a salvo at me, but it's Italian AP. And I should be upset. Maybe I should be more frightened, but I'm really not, as I'm about to finally get around to using my very first heal of the game. I think I'm going to use it here in the next 20 to 30 seconds or so. He's going to take another salvo out of the stern guns, and again, he's not going to get a tremendous amount out of it. He's going to bounce or overpen. Torpedoes don't go anywhere. I think the Eindracht had his hydro up or something along that. But I'm looking at the battleship like, okay, you're the biggest threat. I need to continue to farm you down. I'm waiting for the San Luis to help me punish the Eindracht. His guns will do a much better job of that than mine. But unfortunately, the Eendrock sees him coming or something, catches a glimpse, and goes bow on sort of to both of us. We're not really able to pin him between our guns highly effectively. And now, the opposing team is into both caps. Now, our Fletcher's about to be on B. That's good for us. We need that because we may yet lose control of these two central caps here in the center and on the east. In fact, I dare say we're going to lose the east. Lepanto hits me again. Takahashi's been trying AP salvos at longer range. He finally gave that up because the Japanese light cruiser AP at long range is pretty garbage. It's just not very useful. He's not going to get a ton out of it, and he finally just swaps to the HE, which is a smarter play. Neptune is fairly resistant to the HE, though. Obviously, I burned through one super heal. I'm a little bit away from having access to the second, as we do go ahead and clean up the Eendrock. Now, again, I'm leaving the Takahashi for the San Luis. That might be a bit of a mistake, but that guy's shown that he understands how that cruiser plays, so I'm trusting him to load the AP and hopefully have a reload booster left to murder that guy. I'm going to stick on the Lepanto. The angle to this Lepanto is really bad, obviously. I'm not going to get amazing damage out of these, as unfortunately, Takahashi does manage to clean up my San Luis. But the Takahashi sails out of the cap while doing it, so staying on the Lepanto has been the correct choice. The Harbin and I are continuing to just farm this guy's HP down. He's never going to cap while we live, simply because between the two of us, our rates of fire are too high for him to ever accrue any cap points. However, the San Luis, with his dying breath, got his port torpedoes off, lands 2 in a flood on the Lepanto, and is actually going to do us a huge solid there by cleaning up that last kill. And now, finally, over 200,000 damage here. 570 shell hits in my Neptune. I think we're finally going to win this game. Neptune has a bad rap. I will continue to say this. It is justified. She is very fragile. But this ship has the reason she's fragile is the firepower she can put out is ludicrous. Between quad torpedo launchers, double quad torpedo launchers on each side of the ship, and the quick firing, how much damage you can farm off of just about everybody with these guns, it's absolutely insane, the damage totals you can rack up if you can stay alive. And that's the trick. Now, I'm looking for this Irian who's basically said, I'm coming to get you, or I'm coming to charge you in chat. And I'm like, all right, well, I'd love to get a Kraken, so let's see if we can pull this off. He's going to pull the handbrake and dodge that second salvo. First salvo's not going to hit him that hard. We just have to adjust. Harbin's obviously going to kind of come in. He wants this kill. But I think I'm going to pick it up here. I am going to get this Kraken right at the very, very end, right there. 220,000 damage in a Neptune, ladies and gentlemen. A radar Neptune, open watering, I won't say all the way, but yeah. So, what lessons can we take away from this particular game? I've said it twice. I'm going to say it one last time. The amount of firepower you have in this hull is insane. It is crazy the amount of damage you can put out against ships that disrespect you. Smart players, clever players, players who start to get hit and figure it out will start to take, angles to you and be like, oh crap, I can't do this for long. And you can't, right? Especially if you're in a cruiser or a destroyer. A well-played Neptune will absolutely make your day miserable. Battleships, that's a different story. The Italian battleship that I kind of ended up scoring off against there is probably one of the better matchups you can get because his SAP will hurt you, but you can heal some of that back because of the way your heal works, and his AP will likely overpen your Citadel. It's one of the only battleships in the game that you might be able to say that about. Just about every other battleship will do horrible, horrible things to you. Here's the other lesson I want you to take away from. What made all the difference in the early going? Having a friendly destroyer, having a spotter. If you really are going to grind out your Neptune, you're not going to free XP this thing, I would encourage you to find a friend. Make a friend who loves playing destroyer and become his buddy. In a perfect world, you'd make a friend with a buddy who likes playing American destroyers, like a Fletcher or a Johnston, right? Or Halford, I suppose, and make that guy your friend. But either way, having a spotter, whether you're playing radar and you're gonna use his smoke and him as a spotter with your radar, or you're gonna play a smoke Neptune and simply use him as a spotter, either way, it makes playing a Neptune, grinding a Neptune out the hard way, so much easier. Huge credit income on this game. 220,000 damage, almost 600 shell hits, 2,500 base XP. Yeah, this was a really, really solid showing. Look at all of this battleship damage, right? 60K off of the Neptune, 70K off of Lepanto. This is what the British light cruiser line is capable of against battleships that give you the chance, give you the opportunities. Look at the Hipper. The Hipper had 47,000 hit points. I got nearly all of them, just about all of them. Again, look what you can do to cruisers. Look what you can do to destroyers. These guns are amazing. The hull is the problem. You're going to fight the hull the entire time you play this ship. It cannot be helped. You're just going to have to work around it. I'll say one last thing. This game is an extreme example. It took me a lot of games to get this game. So understand that if you choose to grind out Neptune solo, it's going to be very feast or famine. You're going to have games like this, and you're going to have games that end in tears very quickly. And unfortunately, that is the nature of this ship and why I would consider it the low point of the British light cruiser line. There she is, ladies and gentlemen. Tier 9 British light cruiser, HMS Neptune. She is a ton of fun. The ship has crazy firepower, but she is also arguably the ultimate glass cannon in the game. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a ship that I would say that about that would have a better qualification. Minotaur's coming up, and she's going to feel a little better than this. She is also a glass cannon, but she has a different set of advantages that are going to make her feel a little better. Dare I say, a lot better than Neptune. So we'll talk more about that next time. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you then.